something happened to the definition of success online, and most people did not notice when it changed. At some point, the question shifted from, is what I am building meaningful, to, is what I am building visible? From, do the right people value this, to, how many people saw it? From, am I building something that lasts, to, did this moment spread? And the shift was so gradual, so seamlessly embedded into the architecture of platforms that measure everything in volume and velocity, that millions of women began orienting their entire creative and professional energy toward a metric that has almost nothing to do with the thing they actually wanted. They wanted to matter. They optimized for attention. And attention, it turns out, is the one thing that looks exactly like mattering and almost never is. This episode is about the difference between those two things. Not because virality is worthless or attention is inherently shallow, but because the confusion between the two has a specific and serious cost for women who are building something real in the digital space. When you optimize for attention, you make a set of unconscious decisions about what to prioritize, what to amplify, what to say and how to say it, what to perform and what to suppress, that are almost perfectly designed to undermine the thing you are actually trying to build. And the thing you are actually trying to build, if you are honest about it, is not a view count. It is a reputation, a body of work, a room of people who trust you completely and return to you not because an algorithm served you to them this week, but because what you do is genuinely, specifically irreplaceable.
That is what respect is. Not the polite kind, the kind that means people are not openly rude to you. The substantive kind, the kind that means people take you seriously, factor you into their thinking, recommend you without being asked, and stay when the algorithm stops pushing you toward them. Respect is durable in a way that attention is not. Attention is given on impulse and withdrawn just as quickly. Respect is built over time through consistency, integrity, and the repeated demonstration that what you say and do is grounded in something real, rather than in what happens to be performing well this week. To understand the gap between these two things, you need to understand how the attention economy actually functions. Platforms earn revenue through engagement, and engagement is maximized not by content that is most valuable, but by content that is most stimulating. The neuroscience behind this has been documented extensively. Emotional arousal, particularly negative emotional arousal, dramatically increases the likelihood that a piece of content will be shared. Outrage spreads faster than insight. Conflict spreads faster than nuance. The provocative spreads faster than the considered. This is not a moral failure of the people consuming it. It is a predictable output of a system designed to exploit the brain's threat detection and novelty-seeking responses. Your nervous system is wired to pay disproportionate attention to potential threats and social conflict, and the algorithm knows this and builds accordingly.
What this means in practice is that the content most reliably rewarded by platform mechanics is often the content least aligned with building genuine trust. Polarizing opinions generate more shares than carefully examined ones. Emotional volatility generates more engagement than emotional steadiness. Spectacle generates more views than substance. And while spectacle can coexist with substance, they are pulled in opposite directions by the forces of platform optimization. The woman who chases virality is continuously nudged toward the louder, more reactive, more extreme version of herself by the very feedback system she is using to measure her success. And over time, if she follows that nudge, she builds an audience that is there for the spectacle, not for her. An audience that will leave the moment someone else offers a more stimulating version of the same performance. Think about the specific texture of attention versus respect in the context of women who have navigated this distinction well. There are creators, writers, thinkers, builders you can probably name, who have never gone viral in the conventional sense, who do not have the largest followings in their space, but who have built something that functions differently from a typical content following. Their audience does not just consume what they make, they apply it, they remember it months later. They bring it into conversations with other people as if it came from their own thinking, because it has been absorbed so completely that it no longer feels separate from their own perspective. They write to the creator not with, "I loved this," but with, "This changed something specific in how I understand something specific." That is the signal of respect, not volume, not virality, the particular quality of how what you made landed in another person's interior and what it did there.
Now think about the reverse. Think about the accounts you have watched go viral. The creators who had a moment of massive, rapid audience growth driven by a particularly stimulating piece of content. And notice what often happens next. The audience that arrived for the viral moment is frequently not the audience that stays. Because the audience that arrives for a viral moment arrived for stimulation, for novelty, for the particular emotional spike that one piece of content delivered. And when the next piece of content does not deliver that same spike, because nothing can sustain that kind of peak, they leave. The creator is left with inflated numbers, diminished genuine engagement, and the uncomfortable pressure to recreate the viral moment by doing more of whatever caused it, which usually means more of exactly what was least authentic about what they do. This is a specific and well-documented trap that has ended more creative careers and corroded more genuine voices than any other single force in the digital space. The woman who goes viral for something that was not representative of her best or most real work, and then feels the pressure to repeat that performance, often finds herself in a slow process of being pulled away from who she actually is by the crowd's appetite for the version of her that got the most attention. She starts to become the viral version rather than the real version. And the real version, which was always more interesting, more complex, and more genuinely valuable, gets quieter with every optimization.
Let us be specific about what the alternative looks like. A woman named Simone spent 3 years building an audience through deeply researched, carefully written content in a niche area of personal finance. Her posts were long, her explanations were detailed. She never sensationalized, she never simplified to the point of distortion for the sake of accessibility. Her growth was slow and extremely consistent. She did not go viral once in 3 years. But at the end of those 3 years, she had something that almost no viral creator had. She had an audience that trusted her with the specific, consequential, real money decisions of their lives. They wrote to her for advice on individual situations. They tagged her when other creators in her space got something wrong. They defended her publicly when she was criticized, not out of fan loyalty, but out of the particular conviction of people who have tested your advice against reality and found it sound. Simone had not built a following, she had built a reputation. And a reputation, unlike a following, does not evaporate when you take 2 months off. It does not collapse when one piece of content underperforms. It is structural. It exists independently of any individual piece of content because it is built from the accumulated pattern of who you are over time in public. The psychological shift this requires is a fundamental reorientation of what counts as evidence that you are succeeding. In the attention economy, evidence of success is immediate and quantitative: views, shares, follower growth. These numbers update in real time, and they are designed to feel meaningful because they are concrete and visible. The evidence of respect is slower, qualitative, and far less photogenic. It is the message that arrives 6 months after you published something from someone who says it helped them make a decision they had been stuck on for years. It is the colleague who cites your work unprompted in a professional context. It is the stranger who follows you for 2 years in silence and then becomes a client or a collaborator or a reader who stays for a decade. This evidence is real and it is cumulative, but it does not show up in your analytics dashboard, and it does not feel like a reward in the immediate dopamine-registered sense. You have to learn to value it anyway. You have to learn to hold it as more significant than the metric that updates every time you refresh the page. This reorientation also requires a different relationship with criticism.
Attention-seeking is deeply vulnerable to criticism because the audience whose attention you are chasing is not a stable constituency with coherent values. It is an aggregate of momentary responses, and any piece of content that deviates from what generated approval previously is at risk of generating disapproval. The woman optimizing for attention lives in a continuous negotiation with an audience she cannot quite understand, trying to predict and preempt their reactions, because their reactions are the measure by which she knows if she is doing well. Criticism in this context is not just feedback, it is a signal that she has miscalculated, that she has failed at the primary task of being approved of, and it registers accordingly. The woman building for respect has a different relationship with criticism because her primary audience is not the crowd whose approval she is managing. Her primary audience is the smaller, more discerning constituency of people who share her values and her standards, and those people give a specific kind of feedback that is distinct from the noise of a large, undifferentiated audience. Their criticism, when it comes, is engaged and specific. It is the criticism of people who take her work seriously enough to have opinions about it that go beyond simple approval or disapproval. And their approval, when it comes, is grounded and meaningful in a way that 1,000 generic positive responses are not. Learning to differentiate between these two kinds of feedback, crowd noise and peer signal, is one of the most important skills a woman building something real can develop. Consider what it means practically to build for respect rather than attention when it comes to the specific content decisions you make every day. It means being willing to be correct over being popular. It means saying the thing that is true even when the thing that is engaging would be easier and more immediately rewarded. It means refusing to simplify your actual perspective into a palatable soundbite when the full perspective requires more words and more nuance than the format usually allows. It means sometimes publishing something you are genuinely uncertain about, not because uncertainty is a content strategy, but because intellectual honesty sometimes looks like uncertainty, and performing false confidence would be a betrayal of the standard you are holding. It also means being willing to lose audience members who were never really yours. The woman who builds for respect regularly loses followers when she says something that does not fit the expectation that has been built around her. This feels bad in the moment. The number goes down. The performance metric registers a decline. But what is actually happening in those moments is a purification of the audience, a self-selection process in which the people who were there for something shallow leave, and the people who are there for something real stay. The audience that remains after this process is more valuable, more engaged, and more sustainably loyal than the larger number that preceded it. You are not shrinking, you are refining. There is a woman named Ingrid who built a substantial following in the wellness space over several years on the back of content that was, by her own admission, more inspirational than instructional. Pretty images, uplifting captions, aspirational aesthetics. The content performed consistently well, and the following grew steadily. And then she wrote a long, carefully researched piece that challenged a widely held belief in her space, something she had believed herself for years, but had come to see differently through reading and experience. The response was immediate and divided. Some people were uncomfortable, some unfollowed, some left comments that were openly hostile, and some, a smaller but distinctly different group, wrote responses that she described as the most meaningful engagement she had received in 4 years of posting. These were people who had been following her passively for months or years and suddenly had a reason to speak because what she wrote was worth responding to. The piece did not go viral, it went deep. And deep, she realized, was where she had always wanted to go. She just had not been willing to risk the surface performance until that moment. The standard you hold yourself online is not just a creative or professional choice. It is a statement about what you believe your work is for and what your audience deserves. An audience that gets your honest best, however demanding that is to produce and however imperfectly it performs in the short term, is an audience being treated as intelligent and capable of engaging with complexity.
An audience that gets the optimized, stimulating, attention-engineered version of you is an audience being treated as a metric. And people, even people who cannot consciously articulate the difference, feel which one they are receiving. They feel whether they are being respected or just engaged. And the ones worth keeping are the ones who will stay for the former. Attention is abundant. The digital environment produces more attention-seeking content every day than any individual mind could consume in a lifetime. In a landscape of infinite supply, attention is cheap by definition. What is rare, genuinely and increasingly rare, is the willingness to do the slower, more difficult work of earning the particular kind of regard that does not depend on last week's performance. The willingness to build something that means something, rather than something that spreads. The willingness to be the kind of woman whose name means something specific, something trustworthy, something that holds up under examination, rather than the kind of woman who had a moment that a lot of people saw. You already know which of those you are building toward. The question this episode is asking you to sit with is whether the choices you are making every day are actually aligned with that knowledge. If they are, keep going. If there is a gap, this is where you begin to close it. Leave the word standard in the comments if this episode changed how you measure what you are building. One word tells me everything. Subscribe, because the next episode takes everything we have built in this series and moves it into the most powerful territory yet, the kind of influence that does not need to announce itself.